Right, let's go. Yep. So we've got Harriet starting today, or trying the session today, so she likes our class. So Becky started last week and Harriet starting this week. So what I tend to do is like a very quick demo at the beginning of the session, sort of 10 or 15 minutes. I'll record them on my phone and I'll pop that onto YouTube. So if anybody misses any sessions, they can hopefully see what we've been doing or what I've been demonstrating for that session. Okay, so acrylics, so what I tend to do is I tend to put my acrylics just in one of these little boxes. It's just like a little, I think they're really for crafts and things like that, putting beads in. And I've stuck a bit of dishcloth here and I tend to try and keep that down. And it just keeps the damp atmosphere. It's a way of just keeping them moist. But you don't necessarily need that. And then for mixing colours, I just use one of these disposable palettes. I've got quite a few of these if anybody wants to borrow one of these. And my brush is, just a whole range of brushes that I use for either acrylics or oil painting. With acrylics, it's a very quick drying medium. So if I'm painting, quite often I will just sketch out with the paint itself. So you could do that with acrylics if you wanted to, but I do find it dries very, very quickly, so it's not always that easy to move things around. So more often than not, if I'm using acrylics, I use one of these pastel pencils, just to sketch out the main shape. So in this case, just thinking the main tree trunks, and then this level here, and that here, a couple here. So it's just kind of feeling my way around the space, just getting everything roughed in. I like the pastel pencils because I can very quickly wipe them out or wash them out with a bit of water. If you're using, the paper's all right, if you're using graphite on paper, that works quite well. But an ordinary graphite pencil on canvas or canvas boards is quite difficult to remove. So I find these are quite nice to work with, just to get everything rough in the right place. And that's probably all I would need. The main sort of canopy of leaves, I wouldn't try and draw every leaf, but just to get a rough shape around the bulk of them, something like that would be enough for me to then work into. And then try and use a reasonable size brush. That one's probably not too bad. And I work sort of background to foreground. So a couple of weeks ago I did a little oils demo, and I can do that again in another week or two. The oils are slow to dry, and you've got a lot of time to manipulate the paint and move it around. This is very quick drying, so you've got to kind of bear that in mind that you won't necessarily be able to blend colours very much. So mixing up a reasonable amount of paint. So I'm looking at these yellowy colours to start with. So I'm using a yellow, I think it's an orange or a dark yellow, maybe a tiny, this is called burnt sienna. It's like a very reddy brown, and that would be quite useful for these bits on the edge. So let's try a little bit there. So I tend to work background to foreground, so I'm thinking this lies in the background around here. It's actually a bit yellower than that. So also I don't like the paint getting too thin. So if I'm washing my brush out, I tend to just dry it a bit and roll different colours. I'm just going to go for the slightly yellower look and a bit of the orange in that. So that can go a little bit brighter. Yeah. I haven't used this paper very much, but it is actually quite absorbent. So it's drying almost instantly on there. So while I can, I'll just blend a little bit of lighter colours. So I'm adding some white just around here. I want it a little bit lighter for these bits here. And you can go a little bit lighter in there. And then the bit in the middle is very, very light. It's mostly white with just a hint of yellow. So while it's wet, I can just blend that in a little bit like that. As you can see, I've lost most of the tree trunks, but I can still just about see through there where they're going to go. A bit more in there. Might be worth getting some of these colours and tones down next. So I'll just go for a slightly bigger brush, bigger area. And means it's a little bit easier to mix larger quantities of paint. So this particular image is just something I got off the internet, and really the colours are far brighter than they really would be in photoshopped or something like that. So that could be that colour, and then just gradually blend some of these reds into that. So I've added some red and a little bit of crimson as well. This wants to be a bit more that. Yeah, draw into. Just go back to that a bit. Just softening that out with a little bit of water because it's started to dry already. A little bit of the brown in. By the time we get down here, it's quite a reddy brown, and it's quite nice using a fairly big brush and alternating the brush marks a little bit. I tend to, if I can, use bigger brushes and then go to the smaller brushes. And that helps to suggest some of these textures down the bottom. I think some of this canopy of leaves, which really is very similar to what I'm using down here, move that up a little bit. And again, just go in with those similar sort of colours. Actually a bit redder, so a little bit more crimson. And the actual branch, I think I will pop that over the top. Where it comes closer to where the sun is, it gets a little bit more yellowy, a bit lighter. So I'm adding a bit more orangey colours in there, and a little bit of yellow. Just give that a sense of the colour, the flare of the light coming out. Darker again. Better to put some tree trunks in a minute. Yeah, you can get, so this is sort of dried already and it's quite warm in here. So I can get slightly drier marks over the top. Right, leave that. I'll put some tree trunks in. So I'll go to a smaller brush. So I use this morning. So again, the light gets a lot lighter where they're close to the sun. So I think I might be tempted to, I might do that first. It's basically getting some background in first that I can then build on. I've got some brown here, I think. Yeah, I'll add a little bit of brown to that. So think about there. White, and then gets really pale just here. So I'm gradually changing the colour as I go through, and then starts to get a little bit stronger. So adding some oranges and back to the darker brown. actually. It's more of a reddy colour. Let's go for that. Like that. Over here, they're a little bit darker. Go with that tone, and then add some of the orange I've got mixed already into the mix. And the same here. A bit red. Again, I think acrylics is quite a nice medium if you're just starting out because it's quite forgiving. You can quite easily paint over areas. The downside is that it's more difficult to blend colours than it would be, say, with watercolours or oils. And then where it's a little bit darker, I'll put that in there. And same sort of thing here. Might be too many repeats there. And then there's the shadows. Let's just add a bit more in there. Yeah, it's just getting a sense of shadows. Again, what you'll find with shadows is it will take on some of the colours of the ground here, but you might have other colours in there that are maybe reflected from the sky or something like that. So here we've got, I think I'll pop that down to start with and do a couple here. And then we'll go across here. Then probably just work into that with some darks, just sort of break it up a little bit. Darker here and there. And this one, it's not a solid line, it's slightly broken, so something like that. And there we come over that way. And then all these branches, you could then put those on as you go. That could be a bit darker. And then for the very thin twigs, need something very. So you get these brushes with very long, thin hairs called rigger brushes. So these are quite handy. This one's a bit old and lost its shape, but these are quite good for long, thin details like twigs and branches. I tend to hold it fairly, not too upright. Basically, have a fairly shallow angle to the board or the canvas, and then you can just run it across a bit like that. It can help to work reasonably quickly. The other thing is you need the paint reasonably fluid, sort of fairly runny. So let's try that again. Yeah, a bit like that. And ones down here can be a lot lighter. So all makes sense? Yeah. Does anybody want to ask anything? Anybody got any questions?
What was the pencil? You said not to use a pencil at the beginning for the outline. Why was that, sorry?
You just got to be a bit careful. The problem is that they can be quite. It's kind of all right on paper because you can usually rub it out. I found if you're using like a painting board, which is like a cardboard with a canvas texture, or a proper canvas, it's quite. You can easily dent the canvas, and it's really hard to remove it because you've got a slightly textured, and then they just don't. You end up smearing it or denting it. So I just like the pastel pencils because I can literally just do that and wipe out the whole drawing, which it's a lot harder work to. These are probably quite useful. Perhaps once you've got everything set out, then you're pretty sure where everything's going to go. You could, if you've got like little details to put in, that's probably a good idea there. But once you're sort of sure of everything's going, yeah, but it's more because it's tricky to remove it. Okay. Cool. Okay, right. So just a quick reminder also, we're here next week, and the 30th I'm not running a class. So I'm having a 1-week break for the 30th. So basically I'm taking part in an exhibition in London, and we've got the opening of the exhibition there. And you're all welcome to come along to the exhibition if you want. So that's up in, and the details are here. but it's up in Chelsea.
Very good.
Right.